Vice President J.D. Vance is live on The View, and all questions are on the table. How he responds to Americans feeling pain from the gas pump to the pocketbook after campaign promises on the economy.
Starting on day one, we will end inflation and make America affordable again.
The national and global impact of America's war with Iran. The battle over ICE descending on U.S. cities. And sharing personal revelations and regrets after finding his way back to faith. It all starts now on The View with Whoopi, Sarah Haynes, Joy Behar, Anna Navarro, Sunny Hostin, and Alyssa Farah Griffin. Now let's get things started.
You know, it's only an hour show. So the first thing we want to do is welcome back the fabulous, the amazing, the spectacular Joy Behar. So, where were you? What did you do? How did it go?
Okay. So I was in London.
Right.
I was doing my play, My First Ex-Husband. Turns out women all over the world hate their husbands. We had a wonderful cast. I think we have a picture of me. I was in it. Jackie Hoffman and Deborah Chasen. The Deborah Chasen is a Brit, and she got it, and they got it. Everybody loved it. It was a great experience.
Wow.
What else?
France?
What was your highlight?
A woman. I was also in Paris for a while.
Right.
I did the hop on, hop off, but at my age, it's more like limp on, limp off. Oh my God! I see why old people like a cruise. This is the highlight of the play. A woman came to see me from Lebanon.
Right.
Oh, my.
Aren't they having a war there?
Yes.
I felt so touched by that. It was like she came
My people
straight.
love you.
She came from Beirut to London just to see me.
Oh, wow, Joy.
Isn't that nice?
That really is something.
Yeah, so I have to go to Beirut now, right?
Yes. The Paris of the Middle East.
It was gorgeous.
The Paris of the Middle East is
Yes, that's
right.
what they call it.
And I missed everybody. I did miss it. What else can I tell you?
I wrote that down for you to make sure you told us you missed.
I missed Sarah in
Read it,
particular.
Marty.
I took pictures
Did you
of...
miss being in the United States? Did you meet? Were you in a completely
Yes.
different time zone, different news cycle?
I did. Well, the jet lag is no picnic, I'll tell you. Right. I still have it.
But you were texting us.
I was texting. Yeah. I took pictures of all the hot waiters in France for all my gay boyfriends, all the Joy boys. I have a little gift for them. And
Did you have great food?
You know, the food in France was not as good as you would think.
Joy, I don't know where you went.
Such an Italian comment.
Really, Joy?
The best food in Paris was Italian and Thai.
No.
She's got an inherent
Well, the Thai,
bias.
the Thai,
is very
absolutely.
good. That's
yeah.
true.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
They got great French food in Paris.
Look, I went
take
to
of the
one
morning.
dinner. One dinner we went to the, I don't know the name, I don't even remember it anyway. Something, Louis.
Something French.
Something Louis.
I mean Louis.
Something very French. It was good. And because Zaslav, you know, the famous David Zaslav, he was took all of HBO there.
Right.
So it was one of the top restaurants, and I was there.
Right.
And it was as good as any other restaurant. It was not great, like you thought, oh my God, I'm having an orgasm. No.
Our first orgasm reference of the day.
Naughty girl. So. And the Brits are great people.
Yes.
I really enjoy myself. You know, you're a huge star in England. They ask about you there.
I'm glad
Did you watch Loose Women?
I did. I was going to be on it, but we didn't need the publicity because we sold all the tickets.
Right.
Yeah.
But
There's
I
a
did
show
watch it.
just like The View, but it's called
But they
Loose
don't
Women.
talk
in
about what
they don't-
they don't do what we do.
No, they
just
don't
like
do
us,
what we
but-
do. But it's the only show that is really women-centric, where it's 4 or 5 women talking about different stuff, and it's great. We have been trying for years to do an exchange program with them, to have them come here to the States and us go over
Spending a
there.
semester abroad.
Yeah.
But also, you know what? There's a lot of. I noticed a lot of sports are going on.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Did you hear about the Knicks?
when I was in Paris, it was the French Open, and they
Right.
won.
Oh, that's right.
And they were going crazy. They arrested 700 people because they went so berserk.
Yeah.
Then there was the World Cup, which
Yeah,
also
which is
still
here
going on.
also
I'll show you
still
the
going on.
World Cup.
I'm just
Brian's like, what is
She came
wrong
back
with
a
her?
loose woman.
What is?
The Vice President of the United States is joining
You
us shortly.
came in hot and with no filter.
Listen.
Well, she's Joy.
The Europeans are much looser, like the show, the loose women.
But we're glad you're back.
By the way, just so
And
you know, the World Cup is going on in the United States.
Yes.
Oh, it is?
too.
Oh.
Yes, and you know the Knicks tour.
I know all
Yeah.
about the Knicks.
But as it turns out, Joy, you're not the only person given the UK culture shock.
Yeah.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer just announced a sweeping change in the country's social media policy. Take a look.
Thousands of parents say their children are addicted to social media. It can leave them trapped in a cycle of endless scrolling that displaces play, sleep, and time with the family. It can harm their mental health. That is why today, the government has decided to ban social media access for children under 16.
Now, spokespeople for Snapchat, Meta, and YouTube have stated that the ban may push teens to anonymous services that are less safe. You know, I don't know what any of these services have done to make them more safe, so I don't know that they're not already dealing with these other services. But can this work here?
It sure can, and it should. So anyone that hasn't read Jonathan Haidt's Anxious Generation, it's the first read you should make. He spoke to all of this, which inspired the wife of a politician in Australia to be the first country to implement these policies protecting our young people. What infuriates me is last week, the U.S. Embassy in London tried to dissuade the UK from doing this because they were worried it would stop up the tech companies. To me, that is literally protecting tech billionaires over the innocence and goodness of our young children. And we can do better.
Well, and what Jonathan Haidt points out in his book, all of these major tech CEOs do not let their own children on these apps because they know these algorithms are skewed to make them addicted. They have huge impacts on mental health, body image, suicidal ideation, horrible. The stats are profound. Florida is doing this, though. Florida's got
Florida
age
is as well.
restrictions. A number of other states, Nebraska's looking at it. I love seeing this at the state level. 16 should be the minimum. I think you should need parental control to be able to get on. It's about protecting kids' mental health.
I agree with it on the state level. I think we should have it here on a national level. I think there's no question that the evidence supports some measures like this. And I will say what I also appreciate about the UK ban is that it bans kids from interacting with strangers online. And that is stranger danger in the current form. And so I applaud the Brits for doing it. And I hope we bring that here to the United States.
I agree with all of that, and I think it has to be a comprehensive, holistic approach. I think parents need to be involved, schools need to be involved, government need to be involved, and I think these social media platform sites that are being liable in some legal cases also have to acknowledge what their responsibility and role is, and also be part of the solution.
Well, it's always a problem if you act like you don't know what we're talking about. When you deny that there is an issue, you have to cop to the fact that there is an issue and we can fix it. But because they will not acknowledge their part in this, it makes it very hard to do. So we'll be fighting this for a little while, but I'm glad somebody did it. And when we come back, we will be back with the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance. For 29 seasons, this show has invited thousands of guests with all kinds of diverse points of view. And we have been asking our next guest to join us for a while now. So we're glad that he's taken us up on the offer today. Please welcome author of the new book, Communion, Finding My Way Back to Faith, the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance.
I was surprised at how tall you were. He's very tall.
Well, if you only see somebody on TV, you just see their, in my case, giant head. So
We all
it hides how
have
tall I
giant
am.
heads,
That's
Yeah.
right.
We are the table of big heads here.
So this is a
Alyssa-
show of MAGA Republicans, right? That's
Yeah,
what my
right,
media
yes.
team told me? Okay, good.
Well, we'll find out, huh? I think you have the first question, Alyssa.
Yes, Mr. Vice President, thank you for being with us. Now, you came into office with clear momentum, but when I talked to my friends and family who supported you and the president and still support you and the president, one issue comes up time and time again, and it's the economy. Inflation's up, wages are down, gas prices are starting to drop at news of this Iran deal, which we will get to.
Sure.
What can you say to voters who trusted you to lower costs on day one, and will they be satisfied by November?
Well, I think that's ultimately up to the voters, right? I think voters have every right to expect as much as possible out of their elected representatives. We certainly know that we were elected on a number of mandates. One was to close the border, which I think we've done successfully, exceeded expectations there. Number two was to lower prices, and there's a lot of work to do, in large part because of what's happened over the last few months in the Middle East. But as you said, oil, which got up to $120 a barrel, now is at $80 a barrel. That's going to be reflected in lower fuel, lower food, lower energy prices. But there's a lot more work to do. The thing that I'm proudest about most, because as some of you may know, I grew up in one of these towns that was forgotten by the leaders in Washington of both parties, is that you're seeing, that's Middletown, Ohio. That's my hometown in southwestern Ohio. It was a proud steel town. I was raised by a grandfather who was a union steel worker, is that those jobs disappeared. Those factories closed down. The thing that I'm most excited about is you do see a large amount of capital investment coming into our country. Factories being built, construction jobs are way up, manufacturing jobs are starting to catch up. So there's a lot more work to do. I think that we're making progress, but ultimately we're going to make our pitch to the voters in November, and they're the ones who get to decide whether we've done a good job or not, and that's how they're going to vote.
Okay. So President Trump has called affordability a hoax. He said that, not me. He's pouring money into this ballroom of his and the reflecting pool. Oh, don't forget the Arch de Trompe, I call it, and a White House cage match. All these things. Why is he doing them when you just, everybody knows that Americans are struggling? What is he spending all this money for?
Well, I got to defend the president on the hoax point. What the president said is the idea that Republicans caused the affordability problem is a hoax. And I think that's true. If you go back to the Biden administration, inflation got up to 9% under the Biden administration, okay? Right now it's at 3.5%. By the way, too high. We're doing everything that we can to bring it back down to 2.5%, which is where most people would like to see it. But we inherited an affordability problem. We're doing a lot to make it better. It's going to take a little bit of time. There's a lot more work to do. But the president knows that a lot of Americans are struggling. In fact, he ran on that. He talked about it. And we've done some things and made some good progress on that point.
He just said he loves the inflation.
What he said, Anna, what he said is that he loves the fact that the inflation is going to come down when this war is over. That's what he said.
That's not what he said.
That wasn't a direct.
Are you his interpreter or are you his vice president? Come on.
Well, look. What the president said. People were asking about the inflation. They were asking about the affordability problem, which again is very real. And what he said is, "I love the inflation because it's going to come down when the war is over." And now, again, we already see gas prices. Gas prices today, $4.06 a gallon, too high, but way down from where they were just a couple of weeks ago. So there's a lot, there's a lot we got to do, but I think that we're doing as much as we can. We're going to keep on working at it. And again, the American people are going to make their verdict, but I think that we have a very credible case to run on, that we brought a lot of new investment. We're building the factories. That is going to pay serious dividends for the American people over the long haul.
When?
Well, Joy, if you look at manufacturing jobs,
Okay.
Those jobs are increasing at a large number. Construction jobs are doing a little bit better. So what happens is the construction jobs to build the factories, and then the manufacturing workers go back to work. That also leads to rising wages. That's one of the things that I'm very proud of. Is if you look at the amount that wages are going up now compared to, say, 2022, they're going up way faster. That's a good thing. You know, the affordability problem. Again, gas, way too high right now. Certain things way too high. You know, rents have been either flat or down for 12 months now. So there are things that are showing signs of life, things that are showing signs of progress. My view, I'm sure you guys don't agree with it, is that we inherited a mess and we're fixing it. But sometimes it takes a long time to fix a mess.
Sonny.
Okay. Mr. Vice President, according to a new report from the New York Times, you were the leading voice behind the scenes to release the Epstein files, and we applaud you for that. And you warned top officials, including top DOJ officials, at strategy meetings taking place inside the Situation Room. We understand that there are tapes of those meetings, that this was a huge problem for the base. The report says you even floated having Tucker Carlson interview Ghislaine Maxwell to clear the president's name, but you were rebuffed by your people. Why?
Well, I'd say, first of all, don't believe everything that you read in any newspaper, whether it's a right-leaning paper or a left-leaning paper, because as you guys know, well, there are things that are true, things that are false, and things that are totally missing context. Well, here's what I'll say. So, number one, I am, frankly, kind of a conspiracy theory on the Epstein stuff, and that story says that that's one of the things that's true, is that some people called me a conspiracy theory on the Epstein
Susie
stuff.
Wiles called you a conspiracy
and I love
theorist.
Susie, but absolutely, she thinks I'm a conspiracy theorist on the Epstein stuff, because I think that it's crazy that you had this guy who is clearly a sex predator who is hanging out with a lot of very wealthy and powerful people. Like, that really bothered me. I don't know what's there, of course. Nobody knows exactly what happened unless you were there, but that really bothered me, and I wanted to have full transparency. What I disagree with is the idea that the White House wasn't committed to full transparency. We have to remember, like, I was inside the room when some of these decisions were made. The Epstein Files Transparency Act, the one that the president signed, the one that led to all these files that we're seeing, the emails. By the way, again, sorry, Joe, I do have to defend my boss. I know you guys don't always appreciate this, but, you know, one of the things you see in the Epstein emails is that Jeffrey Epstein hated Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump literally reported Jeffrey Epstein to the police. That's one of the things that came out of these files.
They were best friends for about a decade. And remember, he signed that Transparency Act under duress when some Republican women, congresswomen like Lauren Boebert, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, did not give in to his pressure of not signing. He brought Lauren Boebert into the Situation Room to pressure her into caving on not voting for that bill.
So let me respond to that. So
that's all true.
Let me respond to that. So number one is, yes, Donald Trump, and he said this, he knew Jeffrey Epstein back in the 1980s. He also threw Jeffrey Epstein out of his club when he found out he was a creep and reported him to the police. That's something that the media often misses when it reports this story. They tell the fact that they knew each other in the 80s, which the president himself admits. They ignore the fact that he narked on him to the police and led ultimately to JeffreyEpstein's downfall. To that point, Anna, you know the Republican Party. Well, it's one of the things that led to law enforcement investigation. But on the point that you made,
it was allegedly over a real estate deal that they got into a fight over.
But the email says
actually they didn't just know each other. Let's just be truthful and transparent here. They didn't just know each other.
He's in a lot of
they were incredibly close friends.
He reported him to the police. That's what I'm saying. That is objective. That is objectively true. But Anna made another point that I think Whoopi, if I may, because Anna made a very important point. This question about, did Donald Trump release these files only under duress from Republicans? And Anna, you know the Republican Party probably better than I do. The idea that Donald Trump runs around afraid of Republican congressmen as opposed to the other way around is kind of crazy.
What was the bipartisan? It was Republicans and Democrats.
But because the Republicans control the House and the Senate, particularly the Senate, you need the Republican sign-off. What the president did is, look, I will say this. Again, I was in there in the meetings. He was very frustrated that the Democrats were making this about him when he's like, look, I threw the guy out of my club. I am the guy who reported him to the police, or one of the people who reported him to the police. The president was frustrated about that, absolutely. But he eventually came to say, you know what, let's just get everything out there. Let's have this out in the public. And he actually called the senators. I was there. He called the senators and said, you know what, pass this bill, I'll sign it. And that was it.
Well, then let me follow up briefly. Let me follow up briefly.
Yes.
It sounds like you believed that there would be men in the files who would be held accountable. Rightfully so. And the American people are with you on this. Why haven't we seen the release of over $2.5 million additional Epstein file documents. It seems like you are someone that is on the right side of history on this.
So we have released, I think it's 6 million files or 6 million pages of documents. My understanding is the 2.5 million, Sonny. I'm going to check on this to make sure, but my understanding is that a lot of those are duplicates of things that have already been released.
So we're not
holding anything back. Some of those things are like the courts have to order you to release them. So that was one thing that we confronted. You talk about this situation room meetings is, you know, there's a big bunch of files that existed, I think in the Southern District of New York, or maybe it was some other jurisdiction, but we were like, we want to release these files, but you need the court approval in order to release the files. Sometimes we would apply to release the files and the courts would say no. So those particular documents, I would need to actually know exactly what you're talking about.
3.5 million documents were released, and my understanding is 2.5 million have not been released.
Those may have been the ones that are under court. So I don't know what the documents you're talking about, but I'm telling you,
let me go to break. Let me go to break.
Sure.
Let me go to break. Because people are looking at me, going.
And let's talk about the book. I'm here to sell books. Communion. Buy my book, please.
Eventually we will, but this is a good opportunity for us to get some clarity on stuff.
Great.
We'll be back with more with Vice President J.D. Vance. We are back with Vice President J.D. Vance. Sarah, you got the question.
Yes, Mr. Vice President. In your new book, Communion, you write about your personal evolution with faith from evangelical to atheist to Catholic convert. And you also explain your evolution similarly on Trump, from calling him America's Hitler to America's best hope. Now, as someone who has admitted to chasing ambition, which you write about in the book, in the past, but now says your faith brought you back to your priorities, I have to kind of use your own words that sit with me from 2016.
Sure.
Fellow Christians, everyone is watching when we apologize for this man. Lord, help us. And I think about that all the time because as a fellow Christian, that is something that weighs on my heart as I watch this country and the leadership at the top, because it's also something I have to explain to my kids, which I know we also share, this idea that our greatest privilege and responsibility are these young people we're raising.
Of course.
So help me find the words to explain to my children what they're witnessing right now.
Well, you know, first of all, it's been well covered that I was a critic of Donald Trump back in 2015 and 2016. Now, obviously, I'm sitting here as the Vice President of the United States in the Trump administration. Well, Joy, a little humility, actually. I think that when you make predictions and those predictions turn out to be false, you got to ask yourself, well, what made me wrong about that? What did I not understand or not appreciate? For example, I said that Donald Trump's economic policies would not lead to wage growth. They did in the first term. That was actually a major, major thing. I said that we couldn't bring back any of those factory jobs because I kind of had given into this idea that those jobs were disappearing. But actually, Donald Trump, you saw a manufacturing boom during that administration. So there's a certain point. Let me just this question. So there's a certain point where you say, you know, I made predictions about this. I ended up being wrong. Yeah. And in politics and anything, I think it's important to just say, you know what? I got some things wrong. And I was wrong about him. He was a very successful president. It's one of the reasons why I've been so supportive of him.
But you go on in the book to explain that good policy was maybe one of your justifications. But the quote, and when you tweeted that or X'd it, was not about policy. It was what Christians were willing to excuse. And that's the part I can't get past. What are you willing to excuse in the name of power?
Well, I would say fundamentally that one of the things I underappreciated about Donald Trump is that so many of the things that people said about him weren't actually true. Again, you talk about humility. Okay, so I see Donald Trump, I see a clip of him, or I see not even a clip of him, but reporting about something that he said, and I take it at face value. For example, let's just go back to one of the most controversial things Donald Trump said during the first term that I was wrong during the first campaign, is that I was led to believe by the stories. I read stories that said Donald Trump said that all Mexicans were rapists. He never said that. What he said is that the certain South American countries, Central American countries, were releasing criminals into our country, including Mexico. By the way, that was objectively true. So it's not so much Christians.
Fidel Castro did that in 1980 with the Mariel boat lift. There have been many, many journalists, including CNN, where you used to work and be my colleague, that have tried to find evidence of that. There is no evidence that Maduro was releasing people from insane asylums or jails like Fidel Castro did do. This was made up, and we just can't, accept it without pushing back.
Anna, we know that there were people who were released from prisons who were encouraged to come into the United States.
It wasn't the Mariel, Mr. Vice President. It wasn't where it was like a purposeful release, open up the jails, open up the insane asylums, and let people flood Florida. I lived through that in Miami.
If you go, it may not have been like Mariel, but if you go back to the caravans that were happening in 22, 23, we know that those things were funded. They were in some ways supported by the government.
There was absolutely
so I don't know how you define support or not support, but if people are encouraged to come into our country after having spent time in prison by their own governments, I think that's a problem.
But, Vice President, can I just add one more thing? Because you do speak about immigration at length in this book.
Sure.
And I believe, as a Christian, I can tell my kids why it's important to have borders. I get that. There are laws, there are resources. I get all that things. It's much harder to explain when I see someone dragged out of a house or wrongly taken to a thing that isn't a violent criminal. It's a little more nuanced as a parent to try to say when someone's referred to as vermin or scum, when I teach them in school about people that have done that before, but this is different. It's very hard as a parent and a Christian to say both things.
And you actually say in the book, you talk about this, struggle, this internal struggle in the book, and you talk about moral trade-offs that result in favoring a strict migration policy without dehumanizing anyone. But listen, over 50 people have died in ICE custody. There are thousands of children, 6,200, that are being held in places like Dilley Detention Center. The people that have visited those detention centers, I don't know if you have, talk about the subhuman, infrahuman conditions, the lack of clean water, the lack of medical attention, the lack of education. I would urge you as a Christian and as a father to visit those detention centers where the children are being held and make sure that the conditions are up to the values that we hold in this country.
So you guys have thrown a lot at me, and I see we got 30 seconds left here. But let me say, number one,
You're the Vice President. You can go long.
I'd like to pick up on this theme because I think it's really important. We do have to strike a balance, of course, between enforcing our laws. We don't want to dehumanize people. That is the balance that, look, law enforcement, what I'd say about this, law enforcement is always inherently not a very pretty process, especially when you're dealing sometimes with violent people, with people who are resisting arrest. Some of the people that I've been told by the media were completely peaceful, had never violated any laws. You actually look into the record and you find out that those people were actually being violent, or they did have a criminal record. They had a sex trafficking conviction.
Don't have criminal records. So the majority of people that ICE is rounding up and taking out of their homes from their families, they're separating families. They're using children as bait.
But
the majority are not criminals.
But can I respond to that, guys? Let me just say this. Okay. So you talk about the children. Here's what I'd say. Do we know that during the last administration, we had tens of thousands of children who were sex trafficked by the cartels, who were brought into our country in profoundly dangerous and predatory conditions?
Let's talk about this administration.
But here's the point. Unless you enforce the border, you invite that kind of conduct. You think that our immigration policies are inhumane based on the reporting of one person with a political bias. What I'm telling you is that it's inhumane to allow cartels to sex traffic people across our border.
And by the way,
please hold on.
I appreciate that. We're going to get you back, Anna.
We're coming back with more with the Vice President, and I've got questions for you.
Great, thank you.
We are back with Vice President J.D. Vance. Sir, you come from a poor community.
Sure.
You know how hard it has been for people. Two things. You talk a lot about your Catholic faith, but the Catholic faith says we take in immigrants. We take in people who don't have or who are having a hard time. How do you justify both things?
So let me say first a couple things, Whoopi. So number one, the book is actually way less political than you might think if you were just watching this, because obviously we're getting into the issues of the day.
Right.
95% of the book is really not about politics. I kind of have to write about politics because I'm the vice president, but I want to answer your question.
Right.
So fundamentally, if you think about what is immigration enforcement, immigration is law enforcement. It's somebody who has broken a law. A law enforcement officer has to show up and enforce that law. Mm-hmm. Now, inherently, sometimes that process is not always going to be pretty if you capture a video clip of it, in the same way that if you arrest somebody for committing a violent or a nonviolent crime, sometimes it's not always pretty. What I'm saying is the Catholic faith is actually I think it strikes the right balance here. It says, the Christian faith, I think this is true of Protestants and Catholics, that you can have borders.
Yeah.
You're allowed to enforce your borders. That means the law enforcement piece of it. But you also have to take certain precautions and certain care, okay? And again, your argument is fundamentally, Whoopi, you're saying that we don't strike the right balance. I disagree with you about how we apply that, but nobody, hopefully, is saying we're not allowed to have a border.
No,
what I'm saying is that in order for us to actually enforce the law, you can't set a standard that says you're not allowed to deport anyone unless they've committed a violent crime. You've got to enforce the law equally
So
and justly.
let me do my follow-up.
You don't have to raise your hand,
Let me do my follow-up.
Yes, I do.
Because you were talking about people. What did black people do to this administration that has allowed it to really stigmatize folks of color? And you know how hard it is. You have folks of color in your family.
Sure.
So when you see, things, the Emmett Till stuff coming down, or them doing all kinds of removal of information of black heroes, how does that sit with you?
Well, what exactly are you talking about, Whoopi? Because you just I know
about
Emmett Till was
Emmett Till was the
kid.
All the stuff. Yeah.
No, I want to know what she's.
You don't know what I'm talking
to your
about.
actual point.
So in a lot of the museums, there's so many. Where they're taking down the actual history that happened in this country. Slavery happened. All kinds of stuff happened, and it seems that it has been very easy for this administration to remove that, and also to denigrate black folks who have worked their behinds off to get this American dream. How do you, you know better.
So Sonny, that was actually a very helpful intervention, because I think the story you're talking about is where, allegedly the administration is holding back the appointments of people based on skin color. I've seen the story.
I'm talking about a host of things. I'm talking about black history getting erased from public spaces. Black voter districts are being dismantled. Black leaders are being sidelined from our ranks. Where do Americans of color fit in this vision? Because it doesn't seem like we fit.
I think, Sonny, my view.
And if I may, since October of last year, there's been something like 6,668 refugees allowed into the country. All but 3 were white South Africans.
So, first of all, I'm very skeptical of that number, because we have a lot of different immigration pathways in the United States of America. But let me just address Whoopi's point. Look, first of all, you asked the question, and maybe you don't believe this coming from me, but I think everybody is welcome in our political coalition. Frankly, even if you didn't vote for us, everybody is welcome in our country, so long as you're an American citizen with the duties and the legal obligations and rights to be here. But Whoopi, let me just give you an example of this. Okay, so you say that we're anti-minority or anti-black.
No, I didn't say that. I asked. See?
Well, okay, fine. Fair.
Don't start any stuff with me, man. Don't get me in trouble. Don't start no stuff with me. But
I misinterpreted your question, but let me answer your actual question there. What I'm saying, I think, look at Washington, D.C. One of the most democratic and one of the blackest, by a share of population, blackest cities in the United States of America, has seen a radical decrease in violent crimes and sexual assaults and in murders. We have tried to take the crime issue seriously, in part because we believe everybody, whether you're black or white or rich or poor, deserves to live in a safe neighborhood.
Why does the crime? Where does the crime step in? This is not about crime. This is about
women lost their jobs.
Rights. This is about human
Sonny,
rights.
What you're saying is, we got to do more on the economy.
Black history has been erased from public spaces.
Black history is not erased from public spaces.
Guys, we do have to get to Iran when we get back. There's some very important news
I'm telling you, we celebrate Black history. We celebrate all American history in this administration. You guys might be skeptical of this, but I promise you it's true.
I have to go to break. Anna, God, please, we have more with Vice President J.D. Vance when we come back. Don't do that. We're back with Vice President J.D. Vance. Joy has the next question.
Okay, so in the book, Mr. Vice President, you make a mea culpa of sorts for calling Democrats childless cat ladies.
Oh, man.
Okay.
My most boneheaded comment.
You say that in the book, that it was boneheaded, which it was.
Thank you.
What were you thinking when you said that?
So Joy said when we were off air that I'm fine, which I think is about the best endorsement that I'm going to get out of Joy Behar for a Republican. Thank you. I appreciate that. Graded on a curve here at The View. But, you know, I guess one of the things that I try to do, and I'm always, you know, all of us are always learning. You know, you said you were a lapsed Catholic. I'm a bad Catholic. I think all of us, that's why we need grace as Christians, is because we recognize that there are certain things we got to work on.
Right.
But here's what I'd say about that. So did that comment actually shed light on something and start a discussion, or did it just close people down? And when I make a comment that just closes people down, instead of trying to appreciate the point that I make, that's a mistake, right? And that's on me to do better.
Okay,
because can I just say, the point that
on.
I'd say on that, Joy, is I do think, in a very subtle sometimes in a more profound way, I think our country has become more anti-family and more anti-child. It's harder to travel. It's harder to go to a restaurant.
You only have 10 seconds.
Mr. Vice President, you know your grandchild is, or your child is arriving.
No grandbabies yet.
Not yet. We're very excited for you and Usha, and we wanted to give you a View One.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We will put this on. We'll
J.D.
send you guys a
Vance,
photo.
His new book, Communion, Finding My Way Back to Faith, is available now. Scan the QR code on your screen to purchase a copy, and we will be right back.
Thank you, guys.
Listen, thanks for being here. We want you all to have a great day. Everyone, take a little time to enjoy The View, and do not get down. We will take care of this as a people. We'll be right back. No, we won't. We'll be gone.
La 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 la. Hey, hey, la 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 la. Hey, hey, la 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 la. Hey, hey, la 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 la. Nilako yakako daore aborile iman morom jage mon tumak bhabile nilako yakako daore aborile iman morom jage mon tumak bhabile kakhole murana dusokule mursuana akwali mukluana bukure majote eh la 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 eh la 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 nilako yakako. Ronga nila morom kinu dila polokote ahimu oh ronga nila etisila uri uri jai morom bakhetula oh ronga he buku ronga tumak pabole দিলে ইমান মৰম জাগে মন তোমাক পাবলে কাষলে মোৰ আহানা দুচকুলে মোৰ চোৱানা আকোৱালি মোক লোৱানা বুকুৰে মাজতে